Hello everyone. Since I've been playing a fair bit of these German gunboats lately, one of my viewers actually had a pretty interesting suggestion to me, and that is, well, can I actually carry a game in the Khabarovsk? Now the matchmaking is not really the kindest. They have Hakuryu and they have 3 radars like Buffalo and Nevsky and Alaska, and generally they have a lot of DDs as well. So in terms of matchmaking, this is pretty damn far from optimal. What makes it a bit worse is the fact that this is on my Russian account, so I only have a 19-point captain here, which is, well, standard for most players, but Kaba is in particular is extremely point starved because you basically have to build AFT to increase your range, and even with that you only have 13.5 km range, which is not exactly impressive for a gunboat that can't really close the distance. The bigger downside of it being in my Russian account is the fact that I actually don't have the legendary module. I'm running the reload module on the Kaba because, well, I simply don't have access. Well, I'm running the rudder. I think it goes into the 5th slot. So fundamentally, I can't get mixture range in any way whatsoever. Instead, I'm just stuck running a double rudder Kaba. And I'm running heel Kaba because, well, I didn't bother respecking or changing it because heel Kaba is how I've always found the ship to be most fun to play. The old school run around gunboating everything. Of course, this ship has been quite significantly power crept by the likes of Marceau and Kleber when it comes to its gunboating role, and more recently the Germans are probably also going to power creep this thing. But I still found it to be a pretty interesting challenge. Can we carry a game in the Khabarovsk in 2021, especially in the current state of the game with rocket planes and all sorts of nonsense constantly harassing you? And can you do it even without the legendary module? Basically what you would expect a fresh player to have. They probably, of course, wouldn't have a 19-point captain, but I mean, they would have the base. The one thing that they would probably be missing is Fearless Brawler. Now, Fearless Brawler is going to get buffed. It is going to get better. They're removing the ship detectability debuff, but honestly, it doesn't really help the Kaba much because you're forced to run the double rudder build on it. So what this means is that my detectability is 10.2 kilometers and I have 13.5 km range. 10.2 kilometers on a DD, well, it's actually worse than what many cruisers have. So cruisers can actually outspot you and they can blap you quite easily. So this is going to be a challenge, no matter how we look at it, but sometimes it is kind of fun to take on these challenges. And there is a bright side that they are somewhat recently, I won't say recently, but somewhat recently, they removed the full AP pen damage on the Kaba. So that means that you can actually angle against incoming AP without being afraid of eating those huge chunks. The downside is, of course, that, well, HE still hurts just as much, and the ship isn't exactly the easiest to play. I am spotted naturally, but I'm trying to get as much damage in on the Sovietsky Soyuz as possible, and I am trying to close the distance with my team. I'm very worried about leaving my team and going off on any sort of an adventure, because the enemy, of course, does have an Hakuryu, and this thing is a huge target to any potential rocket planes, and also the risk of just being torpedoed out of the water by a DD is very, very real. Because even running this double rudder shift, as you can see, the ship isn't exactly graceful. It has a 760 meter turning circle, but it is extremely big and very clumsy, and it doesn't exactly stop well. And since we're running a double rudder, we also don't have room to slot the propulsion mod, which is something that I basically run on all my other destroyers because it gives you so much more maneuverability when it comes to acceleration jukes and just moving out of the way of torpedoes and such things. So a challenge to say the least. There, Soviet Ogneboy gets a bit too greedy though and actually gets spotted out. Well, I guess the Georgia just caught him off guard. The Georgia steaming in full speed with speed boost active tends to catch a lot of DDs off guard, and that's exactly what happened. The Ogneboy got caught between the Georgia and the island, and obviously I'm trying to fulfill the thing that the Kaba does best, and that is deal as much damage as possible to said destroyer. He goes missing, so I just start opening up on the Soyuz. And trying to pick up the kill and trying to basically get deeper into the camp. The There's a gearing somewhere in front of me. I actually see his smoke in front of me. So we have two smoked up destroyers here. Neither of them are actually actively spotting me. So I'm gonna see if I can get into some sort of position, some sort of opportunity where I can potentially pick a fight with these ships at close range. Now I don't want to YOLO into a smoke, because this thing is very, very easy to torp, and your own torps are so very slow. They hit hard, don't get me wrong. Khabar torps actually hit like an absolute truck. They hit like 19.5k each, but they do 53 knots, which means they are stupidly slow. They are, however, incredibly stealthy. They are in fact as stealthy as deep water torpedoes. So I'm trying to see where the shells are coming from, where the gearing is, and I know he's basically right next to me in the smoke. I don't want to go rushing in there, because a gearing can easily turn and torpedo me, since I don't know if he's actually used them. I think those torpedoes in the far back might be his, but that was only one set as far as I can tell. On the other hand, these torpedoes with gearing doesn't have a hydro, so by the time he sees these, if he's not already moving, he has no chance to dodge them, and because of the alpha damage, they can straight up blap him out of the water, which is exactly what happens. We were down 2 ships until that, but deleting the gearing brings it back to being only 1 ship down. I reverse into the cap, while at the same time trying to turn my guns to see if I could get vision of this Ognavoy, and we do in fact get a vision of him, and I try to get as much damage in on him as possible. It looks like he's actually going to ground. No, he does get in behind the island, but I'm hoping that my Smolensk, who's right next to him, will be able to pick him up, and that's exactly what happens. We now have a ship lead. We have 2 battleships pushing down the flank, and well, Khabar IP has always been quite powerful. I feel that's always been one of the great tools of this ship. If you get to shoot things like upper belt, which is what I'm aiming for here, just loading AP means that you pump out quite a lot of damage. No insane numbers. I mean, it used to be a time when this was considered insane damage, but power creep has not been kind to the old Khabarovsk. But this is still decent damage. I'm still getting some decent damage in on this shot Bart. More importantly, I am helping my team secure yet another kill, and I'm helping my team secure this B objective. The enemy team has still not taken any good shots at me, surprisingly. Musashi is caught in the same position. He's nosing towards all the enemy ships, so I'm just going to reverse in and see if I can get some damage in on him as well, because why not? Musashi has a huge freeboard, which makes him incredibly easy to farm. As you can see, some big 4.5k AP volleys. And so far, carrier isn't coming for me. I'm ready to duck out of this position. If the carrier shows up, I'll just charge towards my Seattle and hope that he can somewhat help me against him. And so far, none of them are really shooting me, but I am seeing the Nevsky on the minimap steadily gliding this way, and that is of course a worrying sign. Note that I switched to his unsaturated stern, because I know I can get some really juicy damage numbers in on that, and that's exactly what happens. The stern is starting to look saturated, so I switched to his nose instead. Another juicy target to aim for, and I get some really big damage numbers there as well. That's something to keep in mind. Always try to look for the unsaturated part of the ship to deal the maximum amount of damage. I have tried to remain angled to mitigate the damage, but the Nevsky is, because of those railguns, is dealing a bit too much damage for my taste, so I decided to just duck out of the incoming fire and see if I can just go undetected, because well, I have a lot of things broken and my damage con is on cooldown. And ideally, I kind of maybe want to get behind this island. And since the Amagi is still actively shooting, I decide, you know what, we're just going to park behind the island and continue farming from here. Even if we get plane spotted, the Nevsky will struggle to shoot me as long as I keep the highest part of the island between us. I start a fire on the Amagi, and I just continue blind firing. And at this point, the advantages we have created seems to be enough that this game is quickly turning into a win. Surprisingly, I actually still have 2 heals left, and I am looking quite healthy. I'm trying to get some extra damage in on this Amagi, who's just angling away from me. I don't have the pen to punch through the 32mm, of course, but he doesn't appear to be running fire prevention, so we're just going to try to get as much damage in on him as possible. Hopefully another fire, hopefully some more pens on his superstructure. I reverse away. I actually do want to accelerate and get moving here, but I am a bit worried about what exactly this Nevsky is doing and if my team will show up and support me a bit more, because I actually don't know what this Hakuryu is doing. We haven't seen any planes on the minimap, and there they are. The rocket planes show up. The reason why I was playing so very safe and I was reversing. One of the key things you need to pay attention to is where are the planes. If you haven't seen the planes for a while, that is an active threat to be looking out for. And that's exactly what I was doing. I was waiting to see where on earth are the planes and where will they be arriving. If he goes in for the strike, which I suspect he will, he is forced to dive basically right into the middle of my teammates' planes, which means that hopefully the planes will get shredded behind me. The first strike, not really much I can do to avoid that. My air spotting is garbage, but taking one hit and getting rid of the planes opens up an opportunity to play aggressive. I see him sending torpedo planes on the minimap, so that means there will not be any real threat to me. Now, a good carrier can land torpedoes on a Khaba, or more importantly, he might make me evade in such a way that his team can hit me, but most of them won't even bother trying. So as long as he doesn't have rocket planes in the air, we're going to be playing aggressive. And in this case, that means trying to get damage in on this Amage. He goes in with the torpedo plane. Surprisingly, it looks like he's actually going to go for the strike on me. But honestly, I am not too worried. They won't have time to activate because I am fast enough to just turn into them and basically block the torpedo before it activates. The carrier goes in for a second strike at me, but it seems a bit panicky. My team is still quite close by, and we do manage to pick up the Amagi. Sadly not the kill I was hoping for. I ground kind of in the open in the water, and I decide instead of reversing away, I decide we can just steam through this, because physics in World of Warships are a bit wonky in the sense that, well, if you have enough horsepower or just enough force pushing towards whatever object that's blocking you, you can kind of keep moving anyway. Sadly, the carrier comes in with yet another squad of rockets. He just lost one, but obviously that doesn't mean that he's out of planes, and he gets a 3,000 damage fully in on me. He keeps me spotted, but I avoid shooting for a bit. So I do manage to get undetected. I still have one heal remaining. I want to close the distance before I engage this Nevsky, and more importantly, I kind of want to be in a situation where I can shoot the carrier as well. But this Nevsky just playing guard dog around the carrier isn't really allowing me to shoot the target that I want. I end up being plane spotted, so I decide, you know what, we're just gonna angle away and we're just gonna start farming this Nevsky, because obviously there is no way we're gonna get to the carrier the way we want. Nevsky gives us broadside, so we do try to get as much AP damage as possible. I try to accelerate Duke a bit. Not being able to run propulsion mode makes it somewhat difficult, especially since Nevsky shell is so good. However, parking the way he is and just focusing on me instead of, for example, a Smolensk, is costing him a lot of health. I might not have the greatest DPM, but Smolensk getting to farm a cruiser does do some absolutely nasty work. So the Nevsky turns away and basically starts trying to disengage. But the one thing that the Khaba still has is really good fire chance and really good shell velocity. So I managed to start a fire on him, and with those last few shells I managed to pick up the kill as well, which gives us a Kraken in the Khabarovsk in 2021. Not something you see too often these days, is it? And my carrier is actually pushing quite aggressively up with us, so we might have had a decent carrier this game as well. The enemy CV is boxed in the corner. I'm really hoping we can pick up the kill. He deletes our Seattle, who was covered by 2 fighter planes, but obviously they don't do anything, so good game design right there, by the way. But our carrier does delete the enemy Hakuryu, so we do manage to secure the kill, and the game ends. 172,000 damage. Honestly, I was pretty okay with this Khaba game. I was surprised at how much utility I managed to get. To be fair, their DDs misplayed, and the carrier didn't quite go after me the way he should have, but I was still somewhat surprised how comfortable this ship still felt in the current state. The legendary mod would make it a lot easier though, because 13.5 km range on a gunboat is really anemic when your concealment is over 10 kilometers. It is so hard to utilize that little 3 kilometer gap you have. especially with carriers flying around, but I'm still pretty happy with it. Confederate, Devastating, and Kraken. Team score-wise, 2,500 base XP, quite good. We even managed to secure, I think, 2 caps on the way, 1 solo cap and 1 shared cap, and we got the Devastating on the gearing, which certainly helped us get those XP numbers up. Detailed report-wise, well, it is a pretty even mix of HE and AP. Actually, I'd say, well, you can the accuracy kind of tells the whole story. 550 HE shells, of which I landed 263. On the other hand, 324 AP shells, of which I landed 206. I load AP when I have big fat broadsides that I know I'm going to hit and I'm going to be able to farm. That's when I load AP to get those big damage numbers. But then if it's a angled or far away target where the damage is not going to be nearly as guaranteed, that's when I load HE and I try to get those fires. Not really the best of RNG when it comes to fire damage, only 17,000, which is kind of one of Khaba's things, burning ships down. But overall, I'd say yes, Khaba still has the possibility of being quite a strong ship in tier 10, despite everything that it has gone through. It's certainly not easy, and you can certainly play significantly easier ships and do this, but it was actually quite fun. I can show you guys my recommended build for the ship. It's not exactly the ideal build, because ideally, of course, you'd like leg mod and you'd like more captain points, but this is what we have, so this is what we had to deal with. Alright, let me start off with the equipment. Turret survival, improved speed boost module. If you don't have this one, run engine room protection. Better dispersion on the main guns, rudder, and once again rudder. Now the reason why you run double rudder is because Wargaming back in the day when they nerfed the Khaba, they gave this thing absolutely atrocious rudder shift. So even if you're running -20 and -40, you only get a 5.3 second rudder shift. To put into perspective how terrible this is, something like a stealthy gunboat like the Daring has 3.7 rudder shift. I'm actually surprised. Oh, this must be an old build. No, never mind. The Daring is one of the few ships where you can't run propulsion. I just mentioned I generally run propulsion on basically all my destroyers. Let's run gearing as an example. 3.3 second rudder shift with propulsion mode. So Khaba is in that state where it just has the absolute worst handling, and running double steering gears somewhat makes up for it. However, if you do have the legendary mod, I highly recommend it, because among other things it gives you extra range, and because your range with AFT is only 13.5, you most certainly need it, and more importantly you can actually use it because your gun ballistics are good enough. And main battery mod 3. You can run smoke. These days I've seen people have some good success with running smoke mod Khaba. Mostly because, well, rocket planes. There's really not a whole lot of counterplay to rocket planes. You'll have a lot of baboons tell you that you can turn off your AA or you can activate your sector and blah blah blah, but fundamentally if a carrier with rocket planes wants to kill you, he will kill you, and there's really nothing you can do about it. So for that reason alone, smoke generator is a very solid choice, but I prefer the heal because I find it more fun to be zipping around and taking fights left, right and center. It kind of reminds me of the old Khaba gameplay. And the old Khaba gameplay has had a bit of a comeback, mostly because you don't get those full AP pens anymore, so you can be a bit more reckless than you could in the past. Captain build wise, preventive maintenance, last stand, survivability expert, and AFT. Or main battery and AA expert, that's the new name of the skill. That's the base first 10 points. You build turret survival, keeping your stuff fixed, keeping your speed up regardless of if you lose engine, additional survivability, which means your healing also heals you more, and additional range on your guns, because it's so important. It's without that 20%, it's even more depressing. Once you have that base build in, then you can mix in Adrenaline Rush, which gives you more damage the more damage you take. And I highly recommend Fearless Brawler. So this would be what, 13 points, and then this would be 17 points. Now the reason for Fearless Brawler is actually getting buffed next patch, so you won't have the +5 detectability, but more importantly, it gives you 10% reload. And that's kind of what you want to do. You want to build full gunboat. I have my last 2 points in priority target. That is not a must-have. I just really love this skill. But if you crave more survivability, you can either go the same choice or you can build incoming fire alert, which is a very good skill if you're not picking PT. Generally, you never want to go both of these. You want to go one or the other because they give you a lot of help with dodging that incoming fire. Technically, after this, you have 2-3 points remaining. BFT is an option if you just want more firepower, but it's only 5%, which is a bit eh. The additional fire chance isn't actually that bad, I'd say, but ultimately, I'd probably just go Superintendent. Extra speed, extra heal, or extra speed, extra smoke. Regardless, useful tools to have for any destroyer. And for example, an extra heal allows you to play more aggressive at the start because you have more healing potential, so you can kind of always make it work. You can always get the benefit from the points. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a defensive skill, even though it says so, because an additional heal lets you play more aggressive. So it's more of a utility skill than a defensive skill. So Superintendent is another option, but we only have 19 points on this account, sadly. This was my Khabarovsk commentary. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I haven't played this ship in a long time, and honestly, it was kind of fun to play. As soon as you admit that basically everyone outspots you, and some things just outspot you by an absolutely horrendous amount, then it's okay. It's okay to deal with. Like, wait, is this what? If I run Concealment Expert on a booster, I outspot my Kaba by 400 meters. Yeah, okay, so as long as you admit that there's a lot of things that you basically just can jump out of the bushes and absolutely annihilate you, Kaba can still be a pretty fun experience. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the commentary, and I will talk to you guys next time.